There's a lot of confusion right now about what is going on with Apple's October event. Is it going to be a press release? Is it going to be an event? Let's talk about it. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. First up, Evan Rodgers has asked iCave Answers October press release or event and why. John Malkin has also asked, are some things delayed to January events because of various constraints? Could it be a mixed event in October with some live and some press releases, i.e. press releasing the MacBook Pros, iPad SE, aka iPad Nothing, and the Mac Mini, and then doing a live event for the iPad Pros with the redesign and a Mac Studio Ultra Pro Max? And all of this confusion has come from Mark Gurman just confusing the hell out of everybody by saying that he thinks it's going to be a press release because he doesn't think there's enough here. And I think he's lost his mind, because in the past, yes, Apple has released MacBooks and the like just by doing updates on the website and doing maybe even a press release, not even that quite often. But the difference in this case is that Apple is creating these chips themselves, and they haven't introduced the M2 Pro, the M2 Max, or anything along those lines yet. That's something that Apple needs to do. Apple needs to introduce why these chips exist, what they're going into. They'll be talking about the benefits of it. There are changes to the chips, just like there was with the M2, with the media engines being improved. There's going to be other stuff probably around AI that's being built into the neural engines. So I think this is going to be quite important for them to do an actual event. It doesn't make any sense when you've got two different MacBook Pros with different processors in, updated Mac Mini, and for the first time a Mac Mini with an M2 Pro inside. The new iPads, which I'm not sure are going to get a redesign. They might be gaining MagSafe or some kind of additional port, but I don't think it's going to be any kind of overhaul in terms of a redesign. And then potentially also we've got the iPad SE or the iPad Nothing that is coming. That would have normally been at the September event, but of course iPad OS 16 has been delayed until October, which just makes all the sense in the world to line it up with an event that you're doing in October, which is also when you're going to release and talk about the features of macOS Ventura once again, because that's being released at the same time. So there's so much to actually talk about. It's very confusing that we're not talking about it. And also, we still haven't had our Mac Pro. You mentioned that we might be expecting a Mac Studio, but I don't think that's going to be coming at this event. I think the Mac Pro might get a little bit of a sneaky peek look, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Team Kinetix asks, iCave Answers, what are your Mac Pro predictions? Design language, when might we see it? Which SoC generation do you think it will launch with? And how crazy powerful do you think it will be? How crazy expensive do you think it will be? Do you think that Apple will work out how to give an Apple Silicon Mac Pro a terabyte of unified memory or RAM? And do you think that Apple are unhappy that they haven't completed the transition to Apple Silicon within 2 years, as the Mac Pro is still rocking Intel chips? I think we as a tech community put way too much weight on little throwaway comments like a 2-year transition. That doesn't mean we have exactly 2 years from today, otherwise we failed. That just means it's going to be over the next couple of years. I don't think that Apple is panicking internally because the Mac Pro isn't out yet, because let's be honest, let's look back at when we've had the last ones. 2019 was the last redesign, before that was 2013, before that was 2009 since they'd updated it, I think. I wouldn't worry too much about any of this stuff. Apple will get the Mac Pro out absolutely when it's ready. My thoughts, having been to the Apple Store and looked at the Studio in person, is that it will probably just be a double height version of the Studio. I think it might well be two Ultra chips, maybe being called an Extreme chip, very much like the Ultra is two Maxes. I think there might be an option for more of those, or you might be able to basically link these things together, as we were talking about with Mac Minis in the past as well. There's been always talk that you would basically be able to stack Mac Minis and just use them in parallel. That might be something that they do with Studios or Pros, not 100% sure. Will we get up to a terabyte of unified memory? I think probably half a terabyte is likely. To go to the 1.5 that they did with Intel seems overkill, unless you're iJustine, who just buys the most expensive one of everything. Her and probably MKBHD, the only two people that have actually bought those. In terms of Intel chips though, I think they will be going away before the end of this year, and I think that would, as far as Apple is concerned, complete the transition for them. If they announce the Mac Pro at this event, I think they might discontinue the current Mac Pro and then start selling the new one in the new year. Team Kinetix asks, iCave Answers, what do you think is the single best thing that Apple have ever done? A product, a service, or something else? I think the most true kind of reflection of what Apple is that they've ever done is probably Apple Park itself, that huge, round, beautiful office building, which has now been used for so many events and bringing people in. They've had product launches that they've done sort of in the centre of it, as well as using Steve Jobs' theatre inside there. The circle and everything else just kind of, it fits Apple's design aesthetic perfectly. In terms of things that are the most important for what they've done for the world, probably the iPhone, the fact that that revolutionised the phone in general. The most important thing from my point of view that they've done in at least recent history, Apple Silicon transition, this Mac Mini M1 that we've got over here and my M2 MacBook Air, both insanely good products. Evan Rodgers asks, iCave Answers, what are your thoughts on the new/long existing Samsung battery scandals? So this is all based on a video that was made by Mr. Who's the Boss, Aaron. He's done this basically deep dive. This guy has got a huge, in his studio, temperature controlled iPhone, like smartphone storage area, where he's got all of the phones that have been used for a couple of weeks when they were launched, and then they've been kept all stored at the same temperatures, the same humidity, all that kind of thing for years since. And he went back to this smartphone storage and found that several of the Samsungs had got expanded batteries. They'd basically ballooned because the batteries have failed, and so they've actually kind of forced the products apart. And this even goes back to like the S10, which is only a couple of years old, I believe, but also some older stuff, not the Note 7 hand grenade that was launched a little while ago. But yeah, it just seems that Samsung has either got very bad software built in for managing the battery charging and the kind of the longevity of them, or they've used very, very cheap batteries in the past. He did note that no one else had got any of these issues in any of their phones, whether that was cheap Android manufacturers, iPhones, nothing else. It was only Samsungs that had this problem. What are my thoughts on it? Don't buy a Samsung. It's pretty simple, but I wouldn't want to anyway. Rob Lincoln asks, iCave Answers, what are the chances of a Mac Mini SE with M1 external power supply and a $500 price point? Conversely, if they stick with the M1 Mini, will they retire the Mini Intel and offer a Mini Plus with an M1 Pro? No chance of an iPad Pro ES with dual crown rollers? Will we ever get a watch that can tether to an iPad? Will the first of the M3 chip family show up in a Mac Pro, or has the scaling issue knifed that niche once and for all? Wow, that's a lot of questions. So let's go back to the beginning. So we'll start off with Mac Mini SE with M1 inside. I think that that is very much something that Apple wants to do. Whether they'll call it an SE or not, I don't know. But the Mac Mini always originally started at $499. That was a great price point. It was basically a gateway drug to becoming a Mac user for Apple. So I think that is something that they would love to do. My M1 Mini, we are actually going to get on with this project now, is going into my Macintosh Classic with an upgraded display, and that's going to be like a new kind of all-in-one for me, which is going to be awesome. However, yeah, I think the M1 Mini makes a lot of sense, especially as we've now got iPad Airs that come with the M1 inside, and they retail for what, $599? Yeah, that should definitely be doable. Intel Minis, I think they are going to be going away, and yes, we are going to get an M1 Pro in a Mac Mini. That would be really good. iPad Pro with dual crown rollers, I have no idea what you mean with that. Is it like an Etch-a-Sketch? Is that what we're talking about? Don't think we're going to be getting that. Will we ever get a watch that can tether to an iPad? I don't think we're going to get that. I think we're just going to get the option to set them up completely independently, maybe from next generation, which would be really good so that it can be a standalone device, especially if it's a cellular option. So moving on from there, will the first of the M3 chip family show up in a Mac Pro? No, I think the M3 will show up in a MacBook Air, probably for some reason a 13-inch MacBook Pro. Next WWDC, I think that's the time of year that we're going to be seeing the new M series chips every year. I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Mac Pro is probably going to start with an M2 Extreme, basically a pair of M2 Ultras, as I mentioned earlier in this video. The scaling issue, I don't think there is a massive scaling issue. I think it's a fact that the software at the moment isn't designed to scale across that many cores, but that's something that GPU manufacturers certainly have been able to do. They use thousands of tiny cores versus a couple of large ones, and I think it's just a case of translating that across into more kind of CPU workloads. So that's it for your questions today, guys. We have got some review stuff that I'm going to be doing over the next couple of days. We've got some really cool stuff from Joby that I need to show you. We've got probably a 50% better than Apple's MagSafe Duo, which is great, and I've been using for my travels. Really love that, and a bunch of other stuff, so stay tuned. We've got a whole bunch of that since there's not really much news right now. Thanks so much to the Patreons, and we will see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.